Back here on Sports Talk, joining the show is Audacy legal insider Amy Dash. I know we have you for about 6 minutes. Let's get right to the Deshaun Watson 22 civil suits. Do we know anything more about the teeth and how viable they are?
Yeah, I think the civil suits, at least in the near future, are going to be going through the system. Discovery is going to be complete shortly after he gives his deposition, and they're in the process of doing that. And his attorneys have said that he's going to answer honestly. And the other side's attorneys have said that they're going to use up, every second of those 48 hours that they can to depose him. And I think we'll know a lot more once we hear his answers and as these cases move through the system. But on the civil side, the only way that those cases, since the criminal charges have not been formally brought and it doesn't look like they're going to, the only way that those civil cases could really affect him on the field would be, anything that comes out of the depositions or discovery can be handed over to the NFL by the plaintiff's attorneys to inform their own investigation, and then that might influence a possible suspension.
Amy, does this come into play, or how do you prove this, or it's just he said, she said, or going back and forth, that what is actually consensual? Because you look at Robert Kraft, what came about in South Florida, the owner of the Patriots, and then the old joke like happy ending. Oh, I don't know. But how can it get out of hand and what's actually consensual and what's not? I mean, isn't that a fine line when you think about it?
Yeah, I think the difference here in terms of the accusations, and again, he's always innocent until proven guilty. So right now in the eyes of the law, he's innocent. But I think the discrepancy and the difference between like maybe a Bob Kraft situation where he was going to a parlor where I guess it was understood that those types of things could happen. Here, it's alleged by the women that they had showed up to give a legitimate massage, and they're accusing him of, taking out his private parts, touching the women with his private parts. And rather than just asking them if that's something that they would consent to doing, which, of course, he has the freedom to ask anybody anything, virtually anything at least, that he was, violating their person with his private parts. So I guess that's the difference.
Well, Amy, but how is it? Is it like you just take them for their word, whether it's the victim or the potential victim or Deshaun Watson? I mean, if you actually had a recording or something visual that you could see, I mean, how do you get to the bottom line with that?
Well, I have no idea if Deshaun Watson did any of the things he's accused of. Nobody can really know except the people that were in that room.
Right.
So it's possible to tell. And even when there are juries and cases like this do go to trial, let's say there's a civil trial and there's a jury, they're going to have to decide what happened in that room. And sometimes they have to just decide what they believe happened, but that doesn't mean that's what actually happened.
Amy, also, too, and piggyback what Bob was saying, the burden of proof in a civil trial, and basically in comparison to the grand jury, is a lot less, correct?
Yeah, as far as criminal, yeah.
Yeah, a lot less. It's a lot easier to prove by a preponderance of the evidence than beyond a reasonable doubt, which means, if you have any doubt that this sort of happened the way it's described, then you're technically supposed to acquit the person. Now, that doesn't always happen, of course.
Right.
Sometimes juries convict in a criminal case, because they believe that the person did it beyond the preponderance of the evidence rather than beyond a reasonable doubt. But that's what they're supposed to do, at least.
I know you got to run, but real quickly, do you think Deshaun Watson will get that 6 to 8 game suspension when this is all said and done?
It's really hard to tell because I think the league has been bruised by jumping to conclusions in criminal cases.
Okay.
With Ezekiel Elliott, where they determined, even though there was photographic evidence that he had allegedly inflicted bruises on somebody, there was no direct evidence, like with Ray Rice, where there's a video of him actually punching somebody in the face. So I think they were sued, by Elliott, and they had to go through that whole process. Now, in the end, they sort of won because the court said, hey, you guys all agreed under the collective bargaining agreement that the NFL has the final say on matters of discipline, and this is going back to the arbitrator. But I think that the publicity surrounding that, the time, the money, maybe would make them hesitant to jump to those types of conclusions. Though you never know, because they've certainly, suspended people since. But when you have serious allegations, I think it is dangerous, absent direct evidence, to make your own conclusions without the protections of the criminal justice system.
Amy, right quick, like Ben Roethlisberger, what happened, it's over a decade. that in his incidents in the bar room with a college student, that he didn't get criminally prosecuted. But if you look at it, the NFL looked at a bad image on us, and so you suspended for 6 games. So just because of the image factor, I think a possible suspension could come about with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. And the way they should really phrase it is to say they should come up with a reasoning, if there is any, as to why his behavior was conduct detrimental to the league. If, in fact, they can come up with a reasonable conclusion. But I think they should steer clear of saying that he sexually assaulted women if they weren't in the room, there's no video of it, and he hasn't been formally criminally charged. So there are ways that they can impart a suspension with a broader conclusion rather than a direct criminal conviction in like NFL arbitration.
Amy, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.